Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to session number 23, day 10 of the AMBA and BGA Business School Leaders Forum, brought to you by GoToWebinar by LogMeIn. For those of you that don't know me, I'm David Woods-Hale, Director of Marketing and Communications at AMBA and BGA. This session is going to be a little bit different from some of the others we've run in the past, as it's a panel discussion on collaboration between business schools. And to talk us through the strategy for building business school alliances, I'm thrilled to be joined by Nick Barneville, Associate Dean for Degree Programs at ESMT Berlin, and Lisa Hammergren, Executive Vice President at BI Norwegian Business School. If you haven't joined one of these sessions before, just to let you know that you can ask questions and put forward comments throughout. Just pop them in the little box in your control panel, and we hope to answer as many as we can as we move through the session. Please also feel free to share your thoughts on the social channel of your choice using the hashtag BSLF. So, to kick off the conversation, can I come to you first, Lisa? Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your career? And then perhaps for a bit of context, could you share some key trends that you've witnessed in the market currently that are having the greatest impact on business education?
Yes, so thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me to this session. So I'm Lisa Hammergren, and I'm the Executive Vice President of BI Norwegian Business School. And I'm responsible for both executive education, including open enrollment programs, and then also executive MBA programs here at BI. And we also have a program running with Fudan University in Shanghai. That's also under my responsibility. And I have a background from the business side, so I used to work for big fast-moving consumer goods companies and media companies in Norway, Spain, and the UK. And the trends we've seen recently is obviously technology is a given, the impact of technology. But I would also like to mention the importance of diversity. I think we've all seen how much that means globally the last couple of weeks, and I think my colleagues in the US, for instance, are more concerned about diversity than they are over the effects of the pandemic at the moment. So I think those are two key trends, and then diversity being a part of sustainability as such.
Thank you very much. If I can come to you, Nick. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also some thoughts on the trends impacting business education?
I can. It'll be my pleasure. Hello, everybody. You have probably the graveyard shift. Apparently, we're session 27 or something, and it's Friday evening, or Friday morning, depending on where you are. But anyway, hello, my name's Nick. I'm from Dublin in Ireland. I've been at ESMT in Berlin as Associate Dean for Degree Programs and head of the EdTech Lab since 2010. Half Berliner. And before that, in the industry, I spent 5 years in INSEAD in France as Director of Communications, and I spent 5 years in University College Dublin, the Smurfit School, running the MBA program portfolio there. So I have this mixture of a tech role and a program portfolio manager role. I think for me, the key trends at the moment are, number one, in terms of content. I think the future of work is forcing us to change what we teach. So I think all over the place we're having to develop content which recognizes, the shift towards automation, AI, the demand for less demand maybe for sort of basic cognitive skills, but more demand for technological skills, the ability to work with technology tools from a leadership perspective, and I think a rise in some creative, social, and emotional skills which are necessary to be able to manage the integration of new technology in business. So I think content side is a big challenge and a big trend for business schools. The second is delivery. People are looking for more flexibility. We'll talk a lot about that in this conversation. I would say, there's a recognition from business schools and from participants that a lot of content is better done online rather than necessarily face-to-face. Face-to-face time, I think the trend is, how to use that more purposefully. And the third thing, I think, partnerships, which is why we're here today. I think there is, people are becoming, since in the last 10 years anyway, certainly in the last 2 years, much more open to collaboration. And I think people are really looking for ways to look for value in collaborations and partnerships in the business school community. So I'd say the key trends for me are based around content delivery and partnership.
Lovely, thank you very much. And on that point, which I just want to pick up with yourself, Lise, why do you think that collaborations between business schools are so important, especially at the moment?
Well, yeah, so I can pick up what Nick said about both content and delivery. I think, particularly when it comes to delivery, I think it's clear that if you were to go on your own, it would be very hard. We see that the really big players in the industry, they do go on their own. But you know, for more for our size like ESMT and BI, it makes sense to collaborate because there's the discussion of should you you know, build from scratch when it comes to technology, or should you buy? Then there's a third option, and that is to collaborate, because obviously it decreases both cost and risk, and increases all you know, opportunities. So because you do get more than 1 + 1, and in this case, so it's the case for collaboration, I think, is clear.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, both of your schools are part of the Future of Management Education, or FOME Alliance. Nick, would you be able to tell us a little bit about the Alliance and why it was created, and perhaps what the impact has been on student experience in your school and in your experience?
Sure, yeah. The FOME Alliance is, well, we're 8 schools now. We formed about 2 years ago. We're open for new members who can add value to our group, so let me say that first. But I think we're a set of like-minded schools, or like-minded individuals from schools whose singular mission is to deliver best-in-class online content, which is a focus on pedagogy first, technology second. I think we're fortunate enough that we're all using a common technology platform for delivery of online, and that's a platform called Incendi. So that is something that has helped us to actually form this alliance and get started. So our aim really is to see how we can continue to develop business education in online and blended format with the best possible pedagogy, learning from each other, bringing different use cases from each school, and helping to develop the pedagogy and the platform and the tools around the platform in that together. The impact on the student experience, which was the second part of your question, well, I think if I take an ESMT Berlin student, our blended and online students, they benefit from the collective experience of 8 of the world's leading online and blended learning providers. We hadn't done anything online until 2018. So if they were relying on ESMT only to be best in class, we'd have a bit of a steep learning curve and we'd be way behind where we are now. So I think the students across the network are really benefiting from the collective expertise of all of the partners. Yeah, so it's been a fantastic experience for ESMT, and I have to say, a lovely group of people to work with.
Agreed.
And then I suppose with that in mind, there is so much edtech disruption taking place in the marketplace at the moment. Do you think it's fair to say that the FOME Alliance is almost like the business school's response to this disruption? I'll ask that question to yourself first, Lisa, if that's okay.
Yeah. No, so obviously, you know, like you as mentioned, the competition is really fierce. The competition outside of the university-based education offerings. So I think in some ways you could say it was a defensive move, but I would like to say that it's also a proactive move, because I think the ambition of the Alliance is to grow something entirely different from what the competition is offering. And to look at how, you know, we can provide a research-based offering delivered in a you know, in a completely new way, that could then become something completely different and extremely valuable to the students of our schools. So of course it's also a defensive move because the competition is so fierce, but I think our ambition is to build something completely different, and in that way it's a proactive move as well.
Absolutely. And Nick, if I come to you next, obviously partnerships don't come without challenges. In your opinion, what have been the biggest barriers to building effective business school partnerships?
Yeah, okay. I guess everybody's facing the same sort of challenges. I think the first one is when the partnership approach doesn't identify shared interest. So I think there's so many approaches to partner from people which are maybe one-sided from the approacher, and they don't really consider the shared interest that the potential partner might have in the approach. So I think the first key thing in the partnership is, what's in it for both sides? Where's the shared interest? And once that's established, then a partnership can be successful. But if that isn't really established up front and it's a partnership for a partnership's sake, then I think it's a little bit more difficult. Second thing I would say is, and this is really important, is the personal connection, because you're not developing partnerships between organizations, you're developing partnerships between people. So I really think that unless there's a personal connection between the people who are driving the partnerships and that they're empowered to drive the partnerships, then I think it can be a waste of time. Third thing I would say that's maybe a challenge is transaction costs. So I think an example of the headaches of getting a partnership done with a let's say a large public university is often, sometimes I think there's a brilliant partnership that can be had, but then I just groan to think of all the steps that I need to go through as a small entrepreneurial independent school. I say, okay, decision's done, and then 4 months later, oh, it's at some other committee in a big public university, which is not very helpful. But I think things like a shared platform for technology, can really reduce those transaction costs, similar to the way we've done it at FOME.
Okay, and I suppose with that in mind, considering the technology, if I come to you next, Lisa, do you think that technology is one of the biggest hurdles to business schools, or would you agree with Nick? It's about the sort of bureaucracy. There's a number of different stakeholders involved. How do you think that business schools can really address these challenges and collaborate more effectively, I suppose?
Yes, no, I agree with Nick. I think it's definitely a benefit to work on the same platform, but I guess a lot of technologies are sort of more and more open solutions going forward as well. So hopefully that will not become a big hurdle. At the moment, I think it's a big benefit for this alliance to be working, with the same technology. But I agree with Nick. It's really about people in many ways. So I would say that it's the personal connections, and then getting, not only the ones who are, fired up by this collaboration, but getting more of the school or university involved is really important, so that you have a lot of key people involved. So that's a challenge in itself. And then how to manage, to build those personal connections when you have to rely on technology during those times. That's also a challenge. So I think it's a lot about the personal connections, and then of course it's about the time, because and when everyone's really busy, then I think and that's a transaction cost of course as well, because it's all a question of time. Should you really focus on your school and your island, or should you try to look at the broader perspective? And that's something I think is absolutely necessary, because I do believe that collaboration is the future. I think it will be very difficult going alone going forward.
So Lisa, just on that, if I might follow up, what's your view on whether schools should enable their people like ourselves to actually have a specified innovation role, which allows a specific period of time and builds that into your sort of workload and your mindset to actually be able to spend time on these potential partnership and innovation opportunities?
Yeah, I know it's and that's a good question, particularly because I think during the last 3 months we have all scrambled because we had we have had to really change everything with during 3 months at BI. I know we have transformed more than 100 modules for both for the executive MBA and also for our open enrollment and customized programs. So it's been very, very busy, and it's clear that we have had no slack. So of course people have been working around the clock because there's no slack in the organization. So I think your point, Nick, is that we have no slack. There's no slack for this, and I think it's important for universities and business schools to look at to have that in mind, that you do need people working on this, because otherwise you will lose out to the the big tech companies that do allow for this kind of development work. And I know they're continuously working. One of my previous employers, they're actually trying to build this a new site for for sharing, to be a sort of Scandinavian LinkedIn or university. So I think they're all looking at that, and they have people assigned to this. They do look at, have this extra slack in the organization to create completely new stuff. And we're not, I guess all universities and business schools, they're looking at personnel costs all the time, and admin costs is really sort of grouped, like admin costs needs to go down to be able to hire more faculty. And whereas we know that it's, I think going forward, it will be the teams that will create the value. Both the tech people, the business people, the faculty will have to work together in teams to create this, and also be innovative, because otherwise we will be wiped out in the future.
I mean, I want to pick up on that point, and also your point, Nick, about the personal role of collaboration. So in terms of your role, what most interests you as an individual in collaborating with other schools? How much time do you have to sort of dedicate to building these alliances and partnerships?
Okay, so I think the most interesting thing is, well, as a personal perspective, the most interesting thing is I learn a hell of a lot. And the most interesting thing from a work perspective is that I'm always looking to see how I can use these opportunities to bring forward my organization and its capability and in its programs and products and services. I think if I take FOME as an example, the most interesting thing for me was, or is, it's the demystification of online and blended learning by people who are really, they know what they're talking about. If you're not active in the space, it's a black box. Everything looks super expensive. But from the inside, once you get started and once you get the basics, it's all about incremental innovation. It's like, as long as you've got a shared mindset around, okay, pedagogy and quality first, then, it's very easy to improve and improve. And for me, it's just, I remember just looking at online, we had nothing in ESMT, as I say, before 2018. And I was just thinking, oh my God, we're going to need 20 million. Or whatever it is to actually get involved in this space. And then, you just start talking to people and you get to know their experience, and then you say, okay, tell me about your use case. How are you doing this? Give me some examples. I'm going through it now with FOME members trying to discuss a hybrid classroom scenario. So how do we build hybrid classrooms? Started off with some premium providers who are very, very expensive for each particular room. But then through this FOME Alliance, I'm learning, actually, no, there are things that you can do with Zoom and good AV guys and women to restructure classrooms for hybrid. It's just the different use cases that you learn all the time. And I think when there's this trust between people, I think one of the things I'd be really interested in learning more about is why this particular alliance, in terms of its value to me, is significantly better than many other alliances I'm part of. And again, I think that goes back to the shared benefit that comes to the individual and to the individual's organization, rather than just membership of a club.
That raises a really good point that I want to continue with both of you. What aspects do you measure in terms of the success of an alliance? What impact can you see FOME having on student experience, on your business school as a whole? How do you sort of put metrics in place to look at the success of that?
Yeah.
For you, Lisa, is it?
Yes, I think it's for me, yes. So what we've done at BI is that we developed completely new programs to run on the Incendi platform that we have been working together on the Alliance, and we have been sort of had student feedback from that experience compared to our other programs on other online platforms or in person, face to face. And we have had wonderful feedback from the students, and and I think we just only started. I like Nick, we keep learning. So we know now more about, how we can create, the social experience, social learning during these COVID-19 times. So the feedback so far has been fantastic, because what we have built together, Nick, what we have learned and how we have developed the new programs and courses, it's a completely new experience that has received very, very positive feedback from the the students. And I think we're learning as we go along now how to create more social learning, how to create this experience that is very hard to create in a virtual environment, and that we know that students miss when they can't have it. And that is a value that's come from the Alliance and the work we do together on the platform that we have been working on, the Incendi platform, but also just from the Alliance, I would say.
Sure, thank you very much. So then I suppose my next question really looks at the fine balance between competition and collaboration. So business schools are obviously challenged to attract and retain students, to sell executive education, to gain accreditation, to move up the rankings. Do you think that issues such as this are harming potential collaborations between business schools? And what sort of solutions or, I guess, initiatives do you see that could be put in place to try and encourage a more collaborative culture within the business school environment?
I guess I'll jump in here.
Sorry, Nick.
No,
yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. No, it's fine. We're generally alternating, so it seems to work well. Yeah, I think I think there are things like accreditations and rankings and all that. I don't think that has an impact on whether we're going to collaborate or not. And I think one of the challenges for us in the FOME network was sort of to say, okay, well, these are competitors. I mean, I look at many of the schools. I mean, BI less so. We're less direct competitors than, for example, ESMT and IE would be in a particular blended program. We both have a blended part-time MBA program that's kind of very similar. So we're competing head-to-head on these programs, but it's a big world out there. And we're 8 schools in this alliance, and if we have 8 strong schools who are all competing with each other, we want to say, okay, we're doing blended and online at a higher level than most other schools are able to do it. So I think the market is big enough for all of us. I think that the challenge is, again, I'll say it, the challenge is that in people's time, the incentives to actually push collaboration are sometimes misaligned with their operational responsibilities. So the challenge again is to build in this innovation time, and I have tons of ideas for future collaboration, which have frankly, I don't care what the impact they have on rankings or accreditation. I just think they'd be brilliant products and programs and would attract brilliant students. But it's just really that's not my current KPI. It's sometimes these things are just too long term. So that's a difficulty and a challenge more so than what you might think.
Great answer, thank you very much. And at the moment, we've talked about collaboration in terms of technology, but other collaborations seem to focus on perhaps other tech resources, student exchanges, and teaching. Do you see if there'll be collaboration to share other services, perhaps marketing, alumni relations, careers, admissions, etc., in the near future? And I suppose I'll address this to you first, Lisa. What other main areas of collaboration do you think of that business schools should be focusing? And then after you answer, if we could go to Nick on that one as well, please.
Yes, I think there's quite a few areas where we can collaborate without breaking any antitrust regulations. So, for instance, I think any kind of insight, working on gaining insight into the needs of companies, potential students, that kind of insight, I think it's very wise to split resources, because I don't think it will impair competition, because it will differ from school to school how we work with that insight. But so gaining insight, and then I think any kind of benchmarking work, so you can just learn from each other. And I think because I think our industry, the university-based education, we have so much outside competition, and I think we have more to gain from collaborating and promoting research-based education, and than we have from just competing. That's it.
And yeah, if we come
maybe add something to that, I think on all those things you mentioned, David, were relevant. Okay, yes, we can collaborate on how to optimize our marketing spend by negotiating agreements through maybe with technology partners as part of an alliance. We can definitely become more efficient through collaborations. But I agree with Lisa, at some stage competition kicks in and there's a limit to what we can do in some areas. But I have a firm belief that core courses at business schools are becoming commoditized. I think this is a huge opportunity for collaboration. You're going to see a new initiative from ESMT and 2 other FOME schools, which is not yet announced, where actually we're linking a series of core courses and going for cross recognition of credits, so that we will offer a program from 3 schools that will be that students can take with a certificate from 3 schools, and each school will then recognize the learning from the other schools in the program. So that means that students will get the opportunity to have a 3-school experience, learning pretty much the same content that they would have in a 1-school experience, albeit with the different pedagogical flavors of 3 different schools. So I think as we move towards a commoditization of the sort of transactional knowledge courses, which for me are some of the business school core courses, I think we're going to see more collaboration in that direction. I think we're going to see more collaboration in between complementary organizations. An example that I recently came across and I really liked was the collaboration between HEC Paris and the École Polytechnique in France, where you have a very strong technology program and a very strong business analytics program coming together. For me, that's more interesting than 2 business schools getting together and okay, pretty much one doing what the other could have done themselves. And then I think we're going to see in executive education a lot more collaboration with services firms who do more who do things that maybe research-based faculty are not the most efficient use of resources. For example, business coaching to go with executive education programs, that can be done with partner firms. We've got a very good program going on at the moment with Enterprise Ireland. This is with the ESMT Berlin, and they also have a second contracted group who are essentially business coaches that walk through the firms who are on this organization, on this program. So I think those sorts of collaborations where maybe business school faculty are not the best people to actually deliver the service, but can collaborate with others in different market segments, I think that will increase.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And then I guess staying with the idea of looking to the future, at the start of the conversation, we talked a little bit about EdTech disruptors and the impact they're having on the sector. Now, just about September last year, Amber interviewed about 400 deans and MBA directors across our network, and they were sort of saying, I think 3 out of 4 were saying that the MBA is going to have to fundamentally change over the next 10 years. Do you think that the EdTech disruptors will continue to change the landscape for the future of business schools? And I suppose, are business schools responding quickly enough to the changes in the market? If I come to you in that one, Nick, please.
I think it's really funny that you put a 10-year time horizon. Do you think your program has to change in 10 years? I think if we don't radically change our program, it will be dead in 2 years. That's my view. I think if you particularly you're looking at a full-time MBA program where the product needs to evolve to the market needs. And this could be a very, very long conversation, but I think the need for standard content will continue to decrease. It's a huge threat for schools who don't have an active and unique research profile. I think the EdTech disruptors will have maybe a difficulty in monetizing content unless it's original or extremely well curated. So on the subject of EdTech disruptors, I mean, you take 2U as an example. I think so that 2U are an OPM, online program manager. I think their model will come increasingly under threat as well, because they're a production organization as well as a marketing organization, and schools are increasingly developing their own capabilities to do the production. FOME is a good example of that. But I think in EdTech, I think there's really room for people who are brilliant at recruiting. I think student recruitment in EdTech recruitment is a battleground, and I think if there's anybody who can do that really well, the current EdTech disruptors would be, in my view, well advised to start further unbundling their services, because there's a lot of things that they offer that people don't need. And then one thing that I think the EdTech disruptors, and I have a certain set of things in my mind, everybody else will have different companies in their head. So I've got my OPMs in there, my Coursera, edX and all that, but there are so many different types of ed tech companies. But where I see less of a threat is in pre-experience in undergraduate programs. You know, I really see the life experience of university will not fundamentally change. I think it is I don't know how long universities have existed, but I'm sure somebody can chime in the chat. But I think that sort of experience of the few years of growing into adulthood with a group of peers in a learning environment, I don't think that's going to change by ed tech disruptors in any way, shape or form. The experience might be a little bit different. It'll have more technology in it, but I think the big disruption is coming more for people who are a little bit after that phase.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to pick up on the point about the 10-year thing, we had to ask that question because the question before asked how far their MBA had fundamentally changed over the past 10 years. Very few said it had. So I think we were sort of working within that context.
And what was the percentage of people who said that it should change? Do you have that number?
The people who said it would fundamentally change, I think 3 out of 4 said it would like fundamentally be completely changed within the next 10 years. But I think less than half said that they impacted major changes within the past 10 years. So I suppose there's a model in place and they like it, and you know the disruptors are now coming, so they're seeing a need. But that sort of brings me to quite nicely into my next question. So we did ask them about how prepared they were for moving to fully online learning environments, and we asked that question bearing in mind back in September, before anyone had heard anything about COVID-19 and probably wouldn't have believed what happened this year would actually happen. And about 68% of them were saying, yeah, we're totally prepared to move into fully online environments. We're really confident we've got the technology in place. But I just want to pick up with you, Lisa, on the comment you made about the sort of, I suppose, shock of COVID earlier this year and how, you know, business schools very quickly had to move into crisis mode. Do you think they were prepared for COVID-19? And do you think that they had the things in place to deal with what we're facing currently?
No, there were. No, I let me know if you disagree, Nick. But I don't think anyone was fully prepared for this. I think we were all scrambled. I think everyone. I haven't heard about any school who didn't manage to move their programs onto Zoom or something else. I think so. Obviously, most schools have managed some way or another during the crisis, but I think in particular for MBAs and also for executive education as such, that is not enough. You cannot just, moving everything to Zoom creates Zoom burnout, and it's no, you need to do much more, and I don't think business schools were fully prepared for that at all. So, or do you disagree, Nick?
I don't disagree, but I don't think business schools are prepared for a meteor landing on their campus either. You know, I think this was something that came as a big surprise to everybody who wasn't an advanced level virologist. You know, so I think if we're fully prepared for COVID, then we would have a lot of slack in our organization, to be honest. So I'm really impressed the way business schools actually managed to get themselves organized. I'm particularly impressed with actually business school faculty, the way they, in general, managed to move from often a very traditional environment to a technology-driven, fully technology-driven environment. Obviously, you know, this concept of emergency remote teaching versus planning for future online and delivery and in proper scaffolded experiences. You know, so I think blended will be the new normal. I think people will need to be prepared for that now as they learn what's happened. But I think it would be unfair to expect business schools to have been prepared for teaching remotely under a virus. I think that's unfair.
Yeah, but saying that, like you, I'm also impressed with how faculty has managed this faculty that have earlier been quite hesitant, to put it mildly, to move into virtual and digital. So that was handled really well by I think faculty in many places. But I think even though we all had to scramble these 3 last months. And I think, now it's a really, really good time to look ahead in a more structured way. So I'm very hopeful for what we can achieve from now onwards. So that's another aspect of this. I think we will be able to do this in a better and more structured way that will be very, very beneficial for all schools.
It's really interesting you say that. I interviewed you, Nick, for our podcast a few months ago now, I think, and you said something that I absolutely loved. You said that there was a stage where business schools sort of thought, right, this is a crisis, but they've absolutely now moved into the sort of stage of strategy. So there's lots of innovations coming forward, lots of ideas to take business education forward, and it's in many ways it's been a positive thing. Do you think that COVID will have a lasting effect on the higher education sector for the better?
I think from the perspective of the student, I think it will be for the better. I think I think business schools will become a lot more purposeful about what content they deliver face-to-face and what content they deliver online. I think there will be a more serious assessment of which delivery methodology is better in terms of achieving the learning objectives for the student. So I think there'll be a more efficient use of people's time. There'll be a better use of technology. I think from a research perspective, we're going to see some really interesting interdisciplinary collaborations around data and decisions. I think really what we've seen from Johns Hopkins and from the Robert Koch Institute and all these people that's in Germany, but we've seen sort of the rise of data visualization and the rise of data-driven decision making, and how that then impacts where ethics fits in as well. I think so sort of I think we're going to see some really interesting research which is going to play out for business as well. So that's one positive lasting effect, because that will trickle down into the classroom and ultimately make the learning experience more relevant and more interesting. But I think the biggest outcome will be that there's an increased willingness to consider blended learning as the most practical and most efficient solution for both executive education and degrees.
Absolutely. And I suppose continuing that train of thought, Lisa, do you think that COVID-19 has given you a better understanding of what the future landscape of business schools might look like? So are we seeing things that are starting to take seed now that could potentially grow and develop over coming years?
Yes. I do discuss this a lot with other business schools, and I think we still don't see all the pixels in the picture. I think I'm quite some people think the disruption will go much further than what we've seen now, and so I think we will know a lot more next year. But obviously we see some trends and some things that will happen. There will be more virtual, there will be more blended, and I think there will be the rate of innovation that you're talking about, Nick, will definitely increase, so that we will have ways of doing social learning and building communities in better ways. But I must say, I think haven't seen, we don't know everything yet. We have a better picture, but I'm afraid we don't know exactly how this is going to end.
Absolutely. You'll be pleased to know I've only got a couple of my questions left, and then we can move to questions from the audience. But the last, just to sort of wrap up my part here, I'm going to come to you now, Nick. Do you think that collaborations between business schools such as FOME will be something that will become more prolific in the future? And I suppose sort of staying with that point, do you think that alliances will become more strategic, more collaborative, and lead to closer integration, between business schools in general?
It's hard to say. I think, I don't know about the really big players and the big brands. If they can see something in it for themselves, then yes. But I think for schools that are relatively small, I mean, there are clearly too many business schools in the market. So I see more alliances and collaborations as people sort of try to develop some sort of coherent profile. I think we're going to also see not just collaborations and alliances, but similar to what's been happening in France for many years, we're going to see more mergers. I think setting up a sort of a broad alliance like we have in FOME, it's not an easy thing to set up. So you need to have some sort of reason to set it up. It's not difficult to set up, for example, a group of 10 schools who agree on a common week to send their EMBAs to each other, but to actually set up a thematic-based alliance that's got some sort of purpose, yeah, I don't think you're going to just see them springing up from nowhere. They're difficult, but I think single-issue alliances, you'll probably see a lot of those, you know, maybe you know, more course sharing as technology allows that to help smaller schools achieve scale.
And just to finish this section, what advice, Lisa, would you give to other business schools wishing to develop a global brand through partnerships such as FOME?
Yeah, I hope you liked my answer to this, David. I think you should be really active in organizations such as AMBA. And I didn't mention this in the beginning, but I'm also the vice chair of an organization called Unicon. That's an organization for executive education, such as, you know, open enrollment and customized programs. And I would advise everyone to be active in the organizations you're part of, because it's through those meeting places you meet people you can collaborate with. So that would be my advice. Take advantage, be active, and just make the connection to other people.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
That's totally right. I mean, I think it all boils down to, you know, collaborations are between people, not between organizations.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much. So yeah, this hasn't been too much of a graveyard shift. We've had loads of questions come through for you both. So a couple of people have said, how can we join FOME? How can we join FOME? So I'll maybe let you pick that up with them after the conversation. The first question that's come in is around faculty. So they're asking, we talked a little bit about faculty earlier, but they're asking, how can you really get faculty engaged and motivated to get involved with and adopt new pedagogy and technology, especially when workloads are challenging? I suppose in the context of, you know, being engaged with partnerships and working with other schools and institutions. If I come to you first, Nick. Oh, Lisa, yeah, absolutely. I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think we both need to answer that, because we have what I've learned, you know, that we have very different models at BI Norwegian Business School and at ESMT in Berlin. At BI Norwegian Business School, you know, we're in the Nordic countries in Scandinavia, and so we have this model. We have a very large faculty. We have almost 400 faculty, because it's a very big school where we have 20,000 students, both undergraduate and graduate, and MBAs and open enrollment. So, so we have a very large faculty base, and so our model is that we do need to have faculty really engaged, and they need to do a lot of the work themselves, because also in Norway it's the fact that, you know, faculty don't make so much money. So faculty and business admin, they make the same kind of money, so we all need to do the same thing. So we do need to have faculty engaged, and so to get them involved, to work together as teams, and to have them so that we have built teams around our programs, with, you know, the faculty obviously being a central part of that, the central part of that team. And so that, and also try to have key people trying out new technology and demonstrating to their peers that it can be done. And also to get, you know, the pioneers to get the learning, to get way ahead on the learning curve, so that we can get to those sort of, they can take the hard, you know, the startup phase, and then get more people involved after a while. So that's how we've done it at BI, and obviously we've had some help from the pandemic in getting, I would say, all of faculty now engaged in using some kind of new technology. So that's been fantastic. The pandemic has helped us.
Thank you very much.
Nick?
Yeah, I think sort of getting faculty engaged in new technology adoption, it's a very personal thing depending on the faculty. You know, we have, when we try to enter a new space like online and blended, we're quite recent in it. We had lots of faculty who really wanted to do this. You know, I think they understand that the tide is shifting in terms of how education is going to look in the future, and we're essentially offering a training program to people to future-proof their career. I think that many faculty understand that. There are many faculty who are resistant to that, who require a little bit longer, who require some evidence that this is the case, who require some inspiration from their colleagues that it is not an insurmountable hurdle. But we have to acknowledge the challenges of, there is a huge time investment required from faculty to get started in building new content with new technologies. I think it's ultimately every faculty member will have to come on board with a technology orientation towards education delivery. But I think it will be people at their own pace. For us, we had some early adopters, we've got some late adopters. We're not pushing them. Most of the late adopters are fantastic researchers, so they'll come when they have to, and I think that's okay. I think if we just acknowledge, okay, you know what, you'll come when you're ready, and we don't try to push people. We also try to maintain the flexibility of going external if we need to, if we don't have somebody who's voluntarily interested in moving as fast as others. It's complicated, but I mean, I think you have to understand the motivations of each individual and try and work as best you can with them.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Another question for you, Nick, that's come in. I think it's just picking up on your point about perhaps more mergers in the future. So somebody's asking if you think this would be a good thing, and what potential implications this might have on the lifelong learning initiatives already in place by these schools should they merge.
Yeah, I guess my opinion on whether it's good or bad is somewhat irrelevant. I'm very happy to be part of an independent institution, because you have more control in your destiny, and that's always more fun as part of a professional challenge. So I don't do very well in big organizations as a whole. So for me, is it a good thing as somebody working in a business school? Probably not. For a student who maybe has access to a broader portfolio of opportunity through scale, probably yes. So I think it really depends on your perspective. I think there's a lot of small players in the business school market, and the market is not all that big. So I just think there's too many players. But am I looking forward to the mergers and takeovers phase should it come? No.
Fair enough. A question for you, Lisa. It's quite an interesting one, actually. Somebody's asking about perhaps building alliances with business schools in less developed countries. So perhaps they haven't got the same tech advances to bring to the table. What would be the advantages in schools, perhaps in more emerged markets, working with other schools in less developed economies?
Yes, so can I just say a few words about the MBA program, executive MBA program we're running with our partner Fudan in China. So BI was the first Western school to start a joint program with a university in China in 1996. So actually our program was sort of a gift from our then Prime Minister Gro Harlem Brundtland to Deng Xiaoping originally. And in the beginning, obviously, it was BI coming to China, where you had, there was not a lot of business education going on during the 70s for some reason. So it was, Norwegian professors going to Shanghai teaching business and management. And the last, I would say 10 years, it's been definitely both ways, and maybe even lately more from China, because there's so much, new development going on there. So we have so it's hugely, it's a fantastic partnership that we have with Fudan University, where we really learned so much from this this partnership, and they are, way ahead of us in many ways. So if you look at less developed markets, I think in many ways technology can make it maybe leapfrog and start, and because the cost of technology is going down, so hopefully I think they can be just as innovative as sort of Western schools, because they can use technology right on. They don't have to sort of they don't have the history that could impair them in their development. And also if you have to look at costs in a new way, I think it could actually be beneficial. So I think it could be very interesting to also to partner up with a partner from. Did you use the word less developed? I think that's also. I think in many ways, technology makes countries and schools maybe have an advantage if they don't have to sort of that old history and can just move straight to using new technology. So that could be beneficial, I think, and interesting.
I'd like to jump in there as well, Lisa, on that. And I think technology is a great enabler for collaboration with for example, I'll give you an example of a partnership that we have in Africa with the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. So we've been running an industry bridge program with AIMS in South Africa for 3 years already. So you take mathematicians who are looking to convert into industry and you give them the basic business skills. And we've been doing that with fly-in faculty for 3 years. This year, obviously, no movement. So we've expanded the program to other AIM centers in Ghana and in Rwanda. So we're actually, the program's running as I speak. It's going to 3 locations simultaneously on our Intendi platform with live Zoom sessions from ESMT faculty and soft skills provision done Pan-African by our African partners, bringing in fantastic guest speakers through Zoom. Amazing program management team based in Cape Town, and in Ghana and in Kigali. So I think they've just taken technology and brought it to the next level. So we're providing the basic core platform, and they are just being so innovative in terms of connecting people across Africa through simple tools, mainly through Zoom actually. And it's such a much better program than when we were doing face to face.
So that question should have been for you, Nick. I knew you were doing you were collaborating with countries in Africa, so that's fantastic news. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I think that was a good question and great answer. So thank you very much. Somebody else has asked us about relationships with corporates. And now, so for example, if a business school is in an alliance with another business school, how would that alliance then move to have relationships with corporate partners? Is that something you're doing at FOME, or is that something that you think that business schools should be considering when building alliances?
I can start there.
Come to you yeah,
I'll just start because I have an example. So if you take a different alliance that we're part of, which is called GNAM, the Global Network for Advanced Management, there are 31 schools in this alliance, and this is a broader alliance. It's mainly focused around short exchange programs and some shared courses online as well. But there's an executive education arm. If you have a company that's a global company who's looking for a global executive education program, a custom program, I think this alliance is extremely well positioned to come up with a proposal that can cover multiple geographies at once. For example, I know there are several programs going on as collaborations, for example, between Yale and IMD, who are part of this alliance. There's a couple of programs going on between ESMT and Skolkovo, for example, in Russia, or with Hitotsubashi in Japan. So I think we can, if we have a wider reach with what we're doing, then I think it does become interesting for some companies. You often get these collaborative executive education programs through these alliances.
Great.
Yes, I agree with you, Nick. I think business schools. I think we have a long history of collaborating with corporate programs. So I think this will just it will continue.
Fantastic. I think we've got time for one more question. Somebody's just asked about the next steps for the FOME Alliance. They're sort of asking how many members you would like to have, and really what you're sort of looking forward to developing over the next, let's say, 1 year. to make it less complicated. What are the next steps for the next year for the FOME Alliance? So Lisa, yeah, if we come to you.
Do you want to go, Nick, first? Maybe you want to go? No, I would say we're not looking to be a very big alliance, because You know, as I mentioned, I'm also very active in Unicon, and Unicon is 115 schools, and that's it. And you know, not be and even that is extremely complex. And Unicon was you know started out in 1971 and is very well organized. So I think, you know, with this new alliance, the FOME Alliance, it's hard work. We need it's early days. And I think we're not looking to grow the alliance very much just now. But could I mention that we know we are working out of a platform called Incendi, and that is obviously, it's possible to use that platform, if I may say. So what would you say, Nick?
I would say we haven't yet fully agreed on what the optimal size of an alliance should be. I'm more for more significant growth than many of the other members, because I think that through the interaction we'll get a bit more scale. So I think that, you know, we have these conversations about strategy. We're at the moment as an alliance trying to prepare our views as a set of options for the deans of our business schools. But I think you know, if anybody is interested in getting involved, just ping myself or Lisa on LinkedIn and we can tell you more about it. I would say a little bit, or ping me. I mean, I don't want to volunteer, Lisa, for having all these conversations.
I would pin Nick, yeah. So I would just say that, you know, I would say that we should grow more slowly than Nick would be interested in growing. So maybe they should pin you, Nick.
Yeah, okay. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn and we can talk about it after the middle of July. You know, I think that the things we're working on now, so we've got work groups around course sharing, we've got work groups on hybrid classrooms, we've got a strategy subcommittee, we have another group working on course experience, which is not, or program experience, which is things that are not necessarily course related. But around the student experience, and we've got another group looking at social learning. So you know, I think there are lots of things on the alliance roadmap, and it's, you know, I think that the key thing to come into the alliance is, you know, if you can bring in an entirely different set of use cases that can help advance everybody else, then I think everybody in the alliance will benefit. But if it's a sort of, yeah, you know, we just like the idea of being part of an alliance, then I think you would need to show where the value is that you would bring in, and then I think the people would be open enough to considering applications, as long as it's not coming from a direct competitor of anybody who's already there.
Good point.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. Unfortunately, I think that's all we have time for, but I just want to thank Lisa and Nick for a fantastic session. Loads of insights there and practical advice. So I think people will have a lot to take away and think about. So thank you once more. As I mentioned, that's all we have time for this session. But Nick and Lisa both mentioned Incendi. And for those of you that are interested, you'll be pleased to know that the final session of the conference, which will take place at 3:30 p.m. this afternoon BST, is being hosted by Incendi. So we have David Lefebvre, Director of the EdTech Lab at Imperial College Business School and co-founder of Incendi, and Mark Wells, co-founder and Chief Product Officer at Incendi, joining us to share their expert insight on creating pedagogically powerful learning experiences. So we've put the details of how to register for that session in the chat box. So you'll find that in your control panel. So just click on the link to register. And as I mentioned, that's just taking place in half an hour. Before I go, if you've missed any sessions, we've put all the recordings of those that have taken place already on the website for you. And there's a link in the chat room so as you can find that and access the content. As with all the sessions, we'll be making the attendee list available, and you'll have seen the password for that in your chat box as well, just so as for security reasons, we need to password protect it. So all that remains to be said is thank you once again to Nick. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for giving up your time to speak to us today.
Thank you. Nice to hang out.
David. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening, and I'll hopefully see you again at 3:30 for the next session. Thank you and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.